I actually think that I have a different take on Trump and his actions. And I think that, I think that he actually does want to avoid any sort of war effort in Iran. I tend to think that he's probably rather selfish about this. He does have a huge ego. And I guess what I'm concerned about primarily is that we have this perception that he did not promise the Iranians help. But the fact remains that protest would not have even begun if it wasn't for the US interfering with their finances. It's because of the US and the Treasury and all this, whatever they were doing behind the scenes that actually caused, or I should say, escalated the financial strain that Iranians were feeling, which resulted in the protest. And then, just a few days later, Trump starts posting on Truth Social, which of course gets passed to all the social media platforms, for them to take over, their government buildings, that he's going to have their back. And while I agree that he did not say verbatim that he would overthrow the regime for them, the message was absolutely implied that he would help them much more than we have. I should say we. And because of that, I find the behavior to be very despicable. Iranians are suffering right now. They're suffering a lot. It is now August. This has been going on since December 28th. And the fact remains that we've got an administration here in the United States that apparently doesn't give a rat's ass about 90 million people that are suffering. And that really bothers me. Now, we can sit there and argue and debate all we want to that, he cares and that his hands are tied, et cetera, but he had all this information in the very beginning. So if he was not intending to fully help the Iranians, then he shouldn't have made the promises that he made because frankly, a lot of us understood those messages to mean that he would literally have their backs. And while he did for a short bit in February, he absolutely did not up until then, and he hasn't since. And we can again argue that it takes time to prepare, et cetera, but we are talking to civilians who went out on the streets barehanded and got massacred and are still being executed every freaking day. So we have to take some responsibility here and we need to act. And and I am an American, so I feel that I can definitely state that I'm very unhappy with how things have run in my country. And I also believe that we are going to be screwed at midterms if he does not figure out some sort of resolution like ASAP. And this, I'm not talking about just with Iran. I mean, of course, we've got the leftists that are dealing with all, their worries about fuel. But I mean, the DSA, the concerns about the Socialist Party, that's become a really big issue. And if they do take control of the Senate or the House, then everything to do with Iran is just going to be nothing. I personally think that Trump really is into making a deal. And I think that we put more of our personal hopes into our interpretations of his behavior than maybe we should. And I just wanted to say that I think that we need to do everything in our power to try to convince our government, for those of us that are American, to act. I mean, I think it's we the people that are going to make this happen. That's just my point.
Next is Siddhartha.
So I want to just talk briefly about my own experience and the perspective that it gives me. I was in Israel on October 7th. I was Of course, very disturbed by what I saw, by the images, by the stories that came out, and so on. I didn't actually feel personally in danger, fortunately, but I was deeply affected by what I was seeing. But I have to say that I wasn't really surprised by Hamas's intent, and I also wasn't surprised by the sort of Western reaction. Again, it was extremely disturbing, but it was not surprising. And at that moment, at that extremely dark moment in Israel's history, the so many voices around the world came up to condemn Israel, and in the process to condemn my friends. So it was personally damaging. Now, the reason why I'm here, Armin, I've told you before that I followed you for a long time, since Secular Jihadis, since episode one, I think.
Mhm.
Now, I was interested in that because I was interested in critiques of Islam that were kind of, otherwise I was not hearing, right? I was observing certain behaviors and I was not hearing the critiques. So this is how I discovered you. Now, I never identified as an atheist, so that wasn't really my connection. I was just interested in this, and I was pleasantly surprised to find people giving honest critiques of Islam. So I followed you since then. But why am I here? Okay, why am I here in this group? So the reason why is because at that moment, there were fortunately, few people who stepped up and sort of took the burden of defending Israel and extending a hand of friendship, but nothing like the Iranian community. There was nothing like that. I didn't see that anywhere. Like it was so strong and so vibrant and so courageous. And I just felt immense gratitude for this community. And as I've thought about it more and more, it's not only that, it's that this Israelis, I feel for them so much because of all the hate that they endure. And I know that it's based on lies. I know that from personal experience how much it's based on lies. But even Israelis are generally happy and prosperous people. And when I look at the other side, I see the Iranian people. I see a, a people suffering under a sociopathic regime of unimaginable cruelty, and yet they have the capacity to empathize with the Israelis. It's really unprecedented. I don't even know how to explain like what I'm seeing, but it's so moving. And so this is the reason why I'm here. Now, I wanted to put that in context because I look at where we were on October 7th and where we are today. And I think there has been actually so much achievement. There's been so much for us to be grateful for. There's so much. Um, we look at Syria, we look at Hezbollah, we look at Hamas, we look at Gaza, um, we look at even the IR. We've done a lot of damage. We've done a lot of damage, and of course the job is not done. But when I look at the information narrative, what I see is that the IR and the Muslim Brotherhood have they have conducted a generational war to control the narrative, and so we are in a generational war. I would love for this to be resolved today. I would love it, but I am prepared to keep fighting, um, and because they are prepared to keep fighting. That's it.